Hi, today I'm going to share with you a simple way of choosing the right data for your report for IELTS Part 1. Very often, when I read reports written by students who are preparing, what I see is that they are trying to squeeze as much information, be as descriptive as possible, and include every single data point that they see on the graph. This is a mistake. This is not going to bring you any extra points for task achievement, because this is not the way that you efficiently describe your graph. Today I'm going to show you a little mnemonic that will help you to do just that. So what we see here is a line graph that has the task like this. The line graph below shows the main reasons people gave for moving away from a particular capital city to the countryside. And then the typical summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So the task asks us to select, this is part of the task, and report the main features. Extremely important. Now, what you want to ask is probably, what are the main features? Well, let me tell you. Codes is the mnemonic that I came up with, and we're going to start deciphering it with an O. O, of course, stands for the overall trend, and although it's here for the mnemonic purposes in the second place, it of course goes in the beginning. I'm going to do a different video about writing an overall sentence. This is pretty easy, but that's a topic for a different video. Now, I suggest we start from the end, and S stands for similarities. Now, let's see what similarities we might notice here. We can go with similarities with numbers, similarities in numbers. For example, these two lines, these two trends literally start with the same number. Could we say it's a main feature? Absolutely. We can compare numbers, not only numbers, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, and include them in our report. What we also can compare is the manner of the change. So in this case, for example, these two lines are growing in a similar fashion. They both grow throughout the period, they both start with the same number, and this is definitely a main feature that the examiner is going to look for in this particular task. Moving on. E is for extremes. Another extremely important main feature, and extremes are basically the lowest and the highest points on the graph. In this particular example, we'll definitely have to talk about this peak and how it changed the trend, but keeping it unhighlighted, so to say, is going to be a mistake, because this is a very clear feature. Now, what else we could include? This is a very interesting extreme, because this is the highest point for the number of people who moved away because of traffic. Same thing with graphs that might look like this. So if you see something like this, you will definitely have to say that this particular number had 3 peaks. Or if you see something like this, you might say that this number reached its lowest point and such point in time and remained unchanged since. Moving on, D stands for differences. just as with similarities, we can show differences in numbers. What I mean is, for example, the differences between the lowest and the highest number. See? This. This would be an interesting thing to highlight. We can also show differences in the shape of the lines, right? In this particular case, obviously, the black line, the lifestyle, grew much slower than the traffic, and this is an interesting feature. We could also show the differences in the numbers between the points. So sometimes it's worth it to compare the changes themselves. So for example, we could compare X and Y here. In this particular case, this is going to be how the number of people changed because of traffic and how the number of people changed because of lifestyle. We can see that traffic was a more significant reason throughout the period. C stands for contrast. This is a little bit different than differences, because contrast has to be a little bit more in your face, a little bit more obvious. So contrast is the type of main feature that you want to report using phrases like despite the fact that, or although, or while, or in contrast. So we could say something like, while the number of people who moved because of the rising cost of living was the only number that actually fell a little, it still increased throughout the period. Or something like, although the number of people who moved because of traffic increased most significantly, it never surpassed the number of people that moved because of rising cost of living. So you're showing, for example, that despite this being the highest growing number, it never actually overtook the number of people who moved because of the rising cost of living. So look for something that you can report using linkers of contrast, like despite, although, while, things like that. This is it. Tell me if this format fits your study needs, and I'll share more tips like this. Please make use of it, and I hope to see you next time.